Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Linking Your Thinking. I'm Nick Milo, and we talk about the how and why of notes, thinking better, and really making the most of our mind. Today's video is a special thank you Q&A to celebrate us reaching over 200,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We have your questions from the YouTube community post, and to help you save time, we have timestamps in the description below. Let's get into it. Round 1. Question 1. What's my favorite ice cream flavor? It has to be cookies and cream. But I'm curious, what's your favorite? Are you affiliated with Obsidian? No, they haven't paid me anything, and I pay for their services just like anyone else. I do my best to popularize ways of better thinking. My tool of choice just so happens to be Obsidian because of the million reasons I've talked about everywhere else. I'd like to think that it's a mutual admiration between both of us, but at the very least, I admire that whole team a lot. Here's a deep question from Karen. Nick, I'd love to know the similarities and any big differences between child Nick under age 12 and adult Nick, with examples, please. Thanks for that question, Karen. So child Nick had a temper on him. He chased his older brother headfirst into the fireplace twice, leaving 2 scars on his forehead. He was physically very active. He had so many bruises from playing outside that on a doctor's visit, the doctor actually pulled my mom aside to ask if my dad was the cause of them. Young Nick, child Nick, was very curious. He asked his great uncle how the buttons on his sweater vest could possibly hold that big belly within. That one didn't go over too well. Adult Nick doesn't have that same temper. I think I learned to channel it into 2 things, passive aggressiveness and work. I'm getting much better with the former because I'm a little bit more able and capable to express my thoughts and emotions, and that has just grown over time. I still love physicality though, so that's the same as child Nick, and I just never feel like adult Nick is getting enough movement, but I am getting more and finding ways to get more and more, including dancing. And last, I am just as curious, if not more so now. So I love that question. Thank you, Karen. And here's a question for you. Have you watched more than 3 of my videos? Have they been worth your time? If so, please consider subscribing below. It's the only way more people can find my channel in the YouTube algorithm. And in return, I'll do my best to keep delivering my best for you. The next question comes from Sabine. Your light community is exceptional. How did you come up with your style of hosting and managing it? Well, for starters, it definitely wasn't planned. It's truly a result of the people. The people who have had the largest impact on the community for the longest amount of time are Dan Lardy and Keaton Sondriel. There are about 20 others who without the community wouldn't be what it is. So I'm sorry I can't say everyone's name right now. But that's really been the core that's allowed this community to become what it is. Now, I think platforms are far less important. We started on Discourse, which was not even made for community, but we worked really hard to make it probably the most unique discourse experience possible. Then we added Discord briefly before we dropped it, and that was just because it kind of split the community in half. So that caused more confusion than anything. And now, this last year, we moved to Circle, and I think we'll stay there for the foreseeable future. But at the end of the day, I really think the community has to do with 2 really important things: vibes and truly caring. Now, if we project the right vibes coming from me, coming from Dan, Keaton, anyone else with the team, and if we truly care, then that's what's going to make all the difference. Thanks for that question. Okay, we are on to round 2. You ready for this? Okay, round 2. First question comes from Eric. How good of a college football player were you? Well, I wasn't good enough to attempt to play Division I college football. I played in a division called NAIA, and honestly, I don't know what that stands for. No one at that level was on a full ride scholarship, I can tell you that. So you were truly a student athlete and not an athlete who happens to also take classes. That said, in my 4 years, we won 3 national championships, and I was an All-American cornerback and punt returner. But my proudest achievement was being voted by my teammates as team captain my senior year. Okay, here's the next question. Once you realize that an MOC stands for map of content, once you realize that you need to split that big map into maybe submaps, do you recommend keeping the link in the notes below to the first parent MOC, or do you add links now to these smaller MOCs to related notes? I hope I got that question right from you, Brett. I think you're asking about which of these maps should you link all these individual notes to as the uplink. So essentially you have 2 choices, one of the new submaps or this parent map that you started with? The correct answer is one of them, both of them, or none of them. All are fine. Now, if you're curious what I would do, I would link to one, and I would make sure that's the most relevant one. So what is the most relevant one for you? You'll have to decide that on your own, but I hope that gives you some guidance. Thanks for the question. So if all this talk about maps is making you want to learn how to link notes better, then grab my free email course, The Ultimate Primer to Linking Your Thinking, and that link is in the description below. Next question. I subscribed because I was dealing with too many outside influences without enough reflection. What resources do you have, Nick, that you use to spark your ideas? How do you find so many interesting ideas to think about? And that comes from Chase. I have strong opinions here because too many people are caught in the wrong streams, the wrong algorithms. What are those to me? The wrong algorithms to me are hustle culture, toxic productivity, and definitely hyper-polarized politics. What do all of these have in common? They don't compel imagination. They don't inspire awe and wonder, and they just aren't fun. I don't use resources to spark my ideas. I consume things that spark my curiosity, and then the ideas, they take care of themselves. But to answer your question practically, sci-fi and classic literature both enrich my mind to levels that only these really rich one-on-one conversations can match. Don Quixote, for example. This is about a silly man who thinks he's a knight. That taught me more than 10 self-help books could. And not only that, but it doesn't hurt that reading sci-fi and literature and fiction overall, it just makes you generally way more interesting to be around. Additionally, quality movies. I get a lot of great ideas or concepts from quality movies and even a few TV series. Because of the time investment though, not too many. So I kind of make sure that it's going to be worth my time before I really sink my teeth into it. Next question. Hi Nick, what an opportunity. In spite of the course, I am still struggling with overwhelm when I turn to my PKM to build something. Could you share some workflows and settings that help you get started in the right direction? Thanks for that question, Matt. So without knowing any specifics, I can only share what I would do. I would create a new note and start throwing all my ideas and all my links to existing notes into it. Basically, create a new note and do a brain dump. Then organize that brain dump, organize that stuff a bit, move it around. Then here's the key, start writing or building, whatever it is that you're working on. So you enter in one of the unique individual notes and you start writing or building in there until you get stuck. Then go back to the big map note and either reorganize a bit or just immediately find another idea or note that you can hop into. And this tacking back and forth is really how it works. So just depending where you're at, try to create a new note, dump everything in there, kind of cluster up that information, but then start immediately writing or building or whatever it is that thing that you're working on is. When you get stuck, you go back to the map, then you go back into a new place, start writing, building, you get stuck there, you go back to the map, and then we're just doing this, micro to macro, macro to micro. That's all we're doing. And if we do that, hopefully that can move you along that ARC framework we talk about, add, relate, communicate. That should get you all the way through relate into communicating, where you can package whatever it is you're building or you can share whatever it is that you're writing. Thanks for that question, Matt, because you're not alone. But what I know by now is that you've built up all the tacit knowledge that comes with note apps. You know how to link, you know how to do all these things. So from my perspective, you are so close, and I really hope that tacking back and forth, create a map, put everything in there, and then start writing or building. Maybe that can get you through the finish line. Fingers crossed. All right. Round 3. What are your fave YouTube channels and movies? Also, what is the most valuable thing for you? I'm going to skip the valuable thing question. I will answer about my favorites. My favorite movies, and I've given a lot of thought about this. This list has been ongoing for as long as I can remember. But number 1 right now is Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Number 2 is Rocky. Tied, 2, 3, and 4 I think are all tied. Rocky, Groundhog Day, and The Matrix. So that's my top 4. My favorite YouTube channels. Well, I don't want to necessarily do my favorite, so I'm going to do my hidden gem YouTube channels, the ones that you may not have heard of. So let me do 4 hidden gem YouTube channels. The first is Michael Sugray. That's for philosophy. He has amazing pieces. He used to teach at one of the Ivy Leagues, and now in his older age, he just sits in front of the camera and talks about Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, and even Don Quixote. What Michael Sugre had to add, he added so much context and flavor to Don Quixote, which took me like 2.5 years to read, and to hear how Sugre put that in context to where the author grew up, that the author only had one arm that worked. All these things would just blew my mind and made so much more sense to the story that I had just consumed. So I love him. Number 2, not in any particular order, is Man Carrying Things, and that's just for the absurdity. Number 3 is Quinn's Ideas. So Quinn talks about sci-fi books at length, and I just love his vibe and the information that he provides. It's not just a recap of what the book is, but he has his own flavor and ideas added to his videos. Really amazing stuff, and he's got over 20 videos just on the 3-body problem, which is just the latest and greatest sci-fi series, and it's coming to Netflix soon. That one's really interesting, and it's great to hear his ideas after going through it myself. And number 4 on the list is Pitch Meeting, and that's a hilarious take on movies, and it's just great to again see what somebody else's thoughts are on the movies that I have seen, for the most part, unless it's a movie I know for sure that I won't want to see, and then it's just kind of cool to understand really fast his take on it. Now I have another question for you though. Which of my answers are actually sparking with you? Could you let me know in the comments below? It would mean a lot. Now next question. I love the concept of efforts over projects, and I've walked through your Ideaverse course, but I'm curious, how do you handle individual tasks that come from the effort project task? That's from Matthew. So 99% of tasks I don't handle in Obsidian. You can. I've seen people do it. They tend to be fairly advanced users. So you might ask, what do I do then? Well, when I'm at the computer, I'll use Drafts, which is a Mac iOS app and Mac app. So I'll use Drafts to quickly capture something, and maybe it's not really a task, but I might just be kind of typing words and things I want to remember, but not necessarily add to Obsidian. And then the other one is Things, which is another great app. What I've noticed is I love the Ideaverse. My PKM system is largely about ideas, but if I can draw a distinction, then I like to go analog. And you can see here, I have a little notebook, and I can just keep some things here, some different notes. This is on the Ideaverse Pro, some little things. Consider the meetings template, things like that. So this is just a way to kind of sketch that out. I found that back and forth pretty helpful. Next question. I'll just slightly rephrase. What would you do if you knew you could not fail? And what would you do even if you knew you would fail? I love this couplet of questions. Ali Abdaal mentioned this in my recent interview with him. And that second part, what would you do even if you knew you would fail? That definitely made this splash in my mind. I was like, whoa. And I think Ali said that he would be a magician, because even if he failed on stage, the act of getting ready, performing different tricks, learning different skills, putting on a show would still be worth it. So if I had to answer that question, even if I failed, I would be a college football coach. Even if we had a losing record as a team, I would still have helped raise quality men, and that means a lot to me. Next question. Do you have a system for task management? If so, what is it? What software do you use, and is it integrated with your Ideaverse? I kind of addressed this a little bit earlier, but I digitally capture with Drafts or Things, and it's very loosely. I don't follow any strict systems. What I'm finding is that analog is working quite well for me. So I'll tell you 2 things that I'm doing. So this is called a G-Boon Techno Planner, and it is an analog planner. I just started using it, but actually really, really love it, because it is all, for me, I have 0 ideas in here, but there are a few tasks that I can just simply put right here, and I can just kind of plan my day. And I love my Pilot G2s. However, I've started to switch my pens from Pilot G2s to a single pen that has 4 colors, and it's a friction pen. And I didn't think this was for me, but now I can erase things. So if I can see, like today, in this evening, I'm going to work on the newsletter, but if that changes, I can actually erase the pen. And it's like heat sensitive ink. So I have actually found this really helpful. That doesn't mean that I don't use a digital calendar, because I totally do. But this just kind of keeps me on point throughout the day. And that's how I've been using this. So I love this G-Boon Techno Planner. I'm not sponsored or anything. It's just really cool. And then when it comes to just tasks and little things, then I use this one, which is called a Hobonichi Techo. And I think I said techno earlier, but I meant to say techo. I don't know what that means. It probably means planner in Japanese. But this one's really great for those little thoughts. Again, I got a few others here I can share. Consider meetings template, scope out videos. Can I crack the outputs template? Clean up the prominent people. So this is all Ideaverse Pro stuff that you can see that I'm working on. Next page, consider the idea template. How are concepts going to be handled? So it's kind of a way for me to just, even if it's not a clear task, like go pick up milk, it is asking me to do something, or it's prompting me to think about something. And I love the analog to digital split there. So if it's kind of planning or task-based, analog is not bad. But again, I'm not dogmatic about much. The only thing that I'm probably a little dogmatic about is the value of being able to digitally link and revise and edit your ideas, because you just can't do that on analog paper to the speed or effectiveness that you can do in digital notes. In a single word, digital notes are shapeable, whereas notes here, idea notes here, they're not shapeable. And when we're creating this rich, evolving Ideaverse, we need that shapeability. So even though I ended talking about ideas, I hope you can see how I'm kind of doing what people call task management. Those words don't even come up though. So I'm just kind of trying to plan and, keep, I guess, the executive functioning analog. And then when it comes to that kind of that creative aspect, the connective aspect, really where I'm creating value, that's happening in Obsidian and it's happening in my Ideaverse. Whew, that was a big question. Hope you enjoyed. Okay, let's keep going. All right, this is round 4. You ready for this? Next question. I want to know how you use Obsidian for non-note-taking related content, such as how you did your fitness boxing business, or how you produced those 2 indie films, and how you managed the film industry at large. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but these are all longer stories, so I'm only going to answer one part of this, and that's going to be in the very next question. Okay, next question. Has your experiences working in the world of TV influenced your PKM, Ideaverse style, and methods? And if so, how? Yeah, absolutely. I think in 3 ways. I think there are about 3 ways. The first is how I built this web of connections between people in the industry to rapidly learn about the industry and navigate it effectively. I would look at this person that I was in direct contact with, and I would see who they worked with on past previous shows, what studios were involved, what networks, who they knew. And I made this complex web of understanding that allowed me to be so much more intelligent in the conversations I was having. I was no longer, a fly on the wall. I was no longer a fly on the wall because I was one of them. I could speak the language. And when I did interject an idea, it was well received because I knew the context around it. I knew what they might be thinking already, or who they worked with, or what shows they already had experience with, so I could speak their language. And Obsidian wasn't around, so I had to do all that in a very simple, plain text program called the archive. And that wasn't even a true link. It just kind of searched for whatever you put in brackets. And that worked well enough though. So that's number 1. Number 2 was the amount of notes I took. No one lectures at a podium in the industry, but I took a lot of notes because I observed and I found things interesting. I was trying to understand the shape and terrain of the industry, and that really paid off, as I was just mentioning. And the third was how I took these notes. When I zeroed in on an expert I had access to, I would observe some more, and then I would ask them a well thought out question. They'd appreciate somebody cared so much about their work to ask them that question, so they'd answer thoughtfully as well. So I'd listen, and whatever that conversation, wherever it led, afterwards I would rush back to my work desk and I would type out what they said. But I naturally did 2 things that made all the difference. 1, I added my own takeaways and comments to what they said, and 2, I related it to something else in my notes. If I didn't do those 2 things, then I'm just a note taker. Doesn't matter. But because I added my commentary and I related it to something else, it empowered me to rise up in the industry and be valued and be sought out for future shows. So in this editing example, after talking with an expert in a field, I might link it to editing tips and tricks, or I might just link it up to the main editing map that I had. Next question, what is the best Obsidian feature which you cannot live without? And the second part of this, and what is the worst Obsidian feature that's causing you the most friction? And this comes from Michael. So the thing that I can't live without is linking a new note to an existing map. So basically just linking. It's linking a note to another note, but this note happens to kind of capture a lot of different notes, and we call that a map or a map of content. And why that's so important is because it creates cohesion in my mind. I've taken the new and I've related it to the known, and this strengthens both my understanding and my ability to recall it in the future. I love it. Now, the thing that I don't love right now is changing all the inline metadata that I have to the newer Obsidian properties form of metadata. There's no easy way to do that, and it's a lot of manual work. I'm taking it bit by bit, but I kind of have to do a lot in advance because of the product that we have, Ideaverse Pro, and also because of Obsidian Flight School. So that's a lot of metadata manipulation, a lot of janitorial work that I'm doing right now. I wish there was a faster way, and I have to say, already properties has evolved a lot where it is a lot faster, but there's still things that get in the way. Okay, next question. Are you single? No, I'm not. I'm happily in a relationship. This next question's a little long. I'm a professional screenwriter and producer, and I used your LYT light format to simply put all of my ideas in place to find the cross connections across genres and styles. Do you have any specific advice for creatives on how to use light better? Or with your work on Better Call Saul and everything you know now, how would you use Obsidian on the next series you work on? And here's another one. Would you be open to doing some sort of paid thing where you help creatives bi-weekly? So let me try to answer all those real fast. The first thing is advice. I'll call it guidance. If you are writing creatively in a note app where you can make links, do it this way. Write until you get stuck. Then organize until you get stuck. Then write some more until you get stuck. So what you're doing is you're zooming in and out from notes for writing and notes for mapping your ideas. And so this is going from the micro to the macro. And it's really easy this way. You are working, you're making progress. Oh, I got stuck. What do I do now? Go back to the map. Now you can kind of see the big picture again and decide where you want to go to next. And then maybe you go off in this direction. You start writing or building here, and then you get stuck. You go back to the map. And this back and forth means that you can more often stay in flow. And when you do, you simply have more fun and you get more quality work done. For the next part of your question, Better Call Saul. My role was as an assistant editor, which is a very specific non-writing role. So I didn't have much use for Obsidian for any sort of writing purpose. Now for future shows, say like a Carl Sagan-like series, what I would do is create a zoomed out mapping note, a map of content, and then I'd create all sorts of notes within it and around it. I'd link to it or I'd just write within it. It doesn't really matter. But I'd have a running list of episode ideas and season arcs, along with a running list of unsorted ideas and links that I would just want to keep handy because they're somehow related, even if I don't know exactly how. Maybe I already have a note like this. Now, finally, how can creatives get this sort of hands-on writing environment? It's very simple. You take the Linking Your Thinking workshop, or I teach a class at UCLA called Supercharge Your Writing Efforts, and we cover this stuff a lot. So the last course was remote. I think the next one, however, will be on campus in Los Angeles. So that one, I wanted to make sure the first one was remote. The next one, though, will be on campus. So I hope that answers your question, and we're about to go into the next round. Oh, hi there. You caught me reading. We're on to round 5 of questions. Hope you're enjoying this so far. So what are the spiritualities and philosophies that inspired you most in your life? That came from the troll power. Okay, my spiritual and philosophical development probably began in earnest when I was 19. Now, for the first time in my very cozy Mountain West United States upbringing, I felt like an outsider. It was at a mass for an organized religion. I tried hard to fit in those years. These were my college years. But the institution only allows those who convert to be part of the in crowd. And that hypocrisy between the institution and the message, it left this indelible mark within me. So that didn't really feel good. So after those college years, there was a mixture of, I would say, the Tao Te Ching and Benjamin Franklin's virtues and all these sort of inputs that led me down a truer path for myself. And after listening to hours of Alan Watts on audio, that also helped a lot. Stoicism, virtues, all of these things to kind of create a different sort of worldview that makes a lot more sense to me. So it's definitely infused with the Eastern, it's definitely infused with the Western, especially that kind of Stoic tradition, but I don't lean too heavily into that. And then just kind of, finding my own way. But I'm very much on the journey. I'm very much traveling and enjoying that process as I go along. Do you think that PKM tools like Obsidian will last a long time, or will the AI revolution transform fast our way of PKM and tools? Well, PKM tools will always be around, whether it's cave paintings or links in a tool like Obsidian. The AI revolution won't lessen the need for us to understand ourselves. AI will become incorporated into our systems, but the AI will only be as good as the information it has to go off of. So actually, the best way to prepare your PKM for AI is by writing as much as you possibly can, as personally as you can. But I have to give a huge warning here. I will be waiting for a private, local only form of AI, because I don't want my thoughts processed in the cloud or anything like that. So keep that in mind. AI, when it does come, I prefer that it's looking at my PKM system only if I can control that it's localized and private. Now that said, the AI revolution will distract potentially new people who would benefit from a PKM system, because they won't even have time or think about that they need to discover a note-based application. They won't be thinking, I need to find this thing, and oh, Obsidian's cool. They'll be too busy on Netflix and TV and other forms of entertainment that already exist. Those people will not be able to find these note apps. So in that sense, AI is just another form of a distraction that will take people away from discovering that a PKM system is kind of what they need, so they can calm their thoughts, so that they can gain clarity, that they can make sense of the world around them. So in a nutshell, PKM is safe from AI. PKM will benefit from AI. It will lose potential users, however, to AI via distraction. But that's happening anyways with sporting events, with Netflix, TV, radio before that, all other forms. And the people who will most benefit from AI are people who have PKM systems that have their most personalized writing within it, because then we'll be able to ask and query the AI for specific information, and it should be able to pull up results in ways that we can hardly even fathom right now. The next question is, how did you take notes as a showrunner? Okay, just to be clear, I was never a showrunner, nor was I even in the vicinity of becoming one. I mean, at first I got people coffee. So, there's that. Then I scheduled actors so they could record their lines of dialogue, and then scheduled directors and, got showrunners meals and that sort of thing. Then I managed visual effects and edits. Eventually I got into the Editors Guild, and then I started editing. So that's my path, and it's far different than anything to do with the writing side of the entertainment industry, and especially getting to the top of a show and being that showrunner. I like this question. I'd love to know more background about you, like family and growing up. Your career is broad, from fitness to entrepreneurship to movies and now YouTube. I'm intrigued how that all came about. Well, thanks for that question. I'll share a little bit. I grew up in Montana. Every year for the 4th of July, Independence Day in the States, 50 plus family members and friends, we would meet outside Butte, Montana, in the mountains, where our extended family has 160 acres of land along the Continental Divide. So we're in the Rocky Mountains here. There's no electricity. And as kids, we got to play in the rocks and the trees and get lost up there in story and adventure. And then as teenagers, we had to help cut down trees for firewood for the big barbecue that we do. We had to put up tarps for shade when the sun came out, or hey, it even hails in the mountains in the summer. And we had to do about a million other things that grandma would order you to do if you dared step foot in the old ranch house before dinner was ready. So that slice of life in nature around family, working together pretty harmoniously, it will always have this part of my soul. It imbued me with this foundation that feels as deep as the mountains are tall. Now, I've lived in New York City. I now live in Los Angeles. And while sure, they have changed me a bit because environments change all of us, my core feels unwavering. So that's a huge part of who I am. Now combine that with a self-propelled work ethic, and I think you can kind of see what my life has been. You can kind of get it. My work ethic most clearly started the summer between 7th and 8th grade. Every weekday morning that summer, I would wake up at 6 a.m. and I would run 1.5 miles to the high school to lift weights in the basement, dank, musty weight room with these kids who were way older and way stronger than I was. And I observed the seniors who cared more about sitting on the bench, taking up space, reading the newspaper than they were about doing the next set of squats. Even then, that really disgusted me. I'm still, when I think about those guys, I'm like, oh, you wasted your talent. You wasted so much. And for what? The weight room was a holy place for me those next 5 years. I went from barely being able to squat 95 pounds as a 7th grader going into 8th grade to squatting 450 pounds in competition as a 17-year-old senior in high school. And what better example of a growth mindset than seeing it for yourself, seeing that if you put in the work that you can improve at something. And then that has just followed me anywhere. It's like, oh, almost anything is possible if you put in the work. Now, I won't be able to play in the NBA, but, within reason, if you put in the work, these things are possible. And that's, I think, what a work ethic has really instilled this growth mindset within me. And then I have to at least mention the word curiosity. And if you combine these three things, you get to see what my life has really been about. Roots, drive, and curiosity. So those three things are always mixing together in interesting combinations. And I think you can then start to kind of see, oh, that makes sense now. Hopefully that helps you kind of understand like where I am now and how I got there. Thank you for that question. And I hope you don't mind me sharing a few personal stories. We'll get into it, the bonus round next. Okay, we are almost there. This is the bonus round. This is the final round. So here we go. What are your top 5 inspirations for your work? I love this question. I knew a couple of them, but you really had to make me think. So in the order that I experienced them, the book Man's Search for Meaning. This is a book that, don't tell on me, but I actually kept this. We had to read it in high school English class. Don't tell Miss Barrick that I kept the book. And, you can see it's marked here, number 3. I kept it. I still have it. And because it made such a huge impact on me. So this was number 1. Number 2 was the camaraderie, spirit, and effort that I experienced playing high school football and college football. That is still some of the most wonderful times, is that camaraderie, that spirit, and that effort. Number 3, the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi in his book Flow, and all the work around flow and flow theory. Flow, just the idea of optimal experience, balancing challenge and skill. It is probably the number 1 framework that I most often return to, that most often flavors my thinking. Number 4 is Carl Sagan. I had an airplane flight. I'm in my mid to late 20s and I didn't even know Carl Sagan, but I had a flight in the morning. It was canceled. So I went back and I had an entire day to just sit around to wait for the next flight. And I didn't feel like doing anything. So I opened up Netflix, and for some reason at that time, Carl Sagan Cosmos spoke to me. And I was like, okay, let's start. And over the course of that next day, I made it through the series and my mind was blown. It has made such an impact on me. Number 4 is Carl Sagan. And that impact really is that I saw within him the thing that I would like to do for others. Inspire, awe, and wonder. And that leads me to number 5, the book, The Little Prince. That has so much awe and wonder and whimsy and kid-like energy, curiosity really. And that was something that I think I was around 30 when I finally encountered The Little Prince. So those I would say are 5 major inspirations in my life. Next question. Hi, I'm new to the Ideaverse and to the concepts that it encapsulates. I was wondering about the fact that efforts in the Ideaverse do not have deadlines. So how do you manage an effort, for example, related to the creation of a YouTube video? How will you be able to respect a publication schedule? This is a great question. So I would say try adding a deadline property in the output that you are working on and see if it works for you. Because it might. I've done it at different times. What I usually find is I do better without one, but everyone is different. I understand that. So that's why I say, hey, make it a tiny test. It's very easy to add a property field. You can call it deadline. You could call it due, publish date, premiere date, whatever you want to put there. And you can see how that works. And there are ways to manage it. Next question. Do you plan to introduce new translation technologies in your videos and courses? There are many people who understand or translate subtitles, but we are not good in English to participate in your courses. Thanks for that, Jose. That is what I would call a simmering effort. We know we want to provide translations. We don't know how we are going to achieve that. The solution has to be fast, cheap, automated, and easy to implement. I'm not sure where the technology is. I think it's a lot closer than it used to be, but it's definitely something that we would like to do. And the final question. Oh, wow. Okay. So here it is. As you allowed me to ask anything, then I want to know, how much money do you make on YouTube? Not as much as you think. All I can say, I won't give the exact number, but all I can say is that YouTube accounted for, I'm looking at this year, YouTube accounted for just over 1% of what Linking Your Thinking as a company made. So, I mean, YouTube has a huge impact. It gets a lot of people aware of what we're up to. But as far as what the revenue is from YouTube, 1%. So the other 99% come from the light workshop that we run, Obsidian Flight School, and a lot of it will also come from Ideaverse Pro as that launches. Okay, whoa, we did it. Now, I just have to know which of my answers actually sparked with you. Could you let me know in the comments below? Whew, I've been recording for an hour and I'd really love to know what sparked with you. So thank you if you can do that. And if you're looking for targeted answers related to Obsidian, you'll definitely want to check out my Q&A almost completely dedicated to it. Just click here and Past Nick will see you there. And until next time, stay connected.